Hi everyone, welcome to DIY Mommy's Minute. Today I'm going to show you how I'm making my solar light headstone or gravestone saddles for Christmas this year. I do have another video where I do a saddle just with a big bow at the top. I'll post the link down below in the description box. But this is a new video for this year and I wanted to add something different, so we are going to add a solar light. So you're going to need your base, and this is what connects to the headstone or gravestone. This I purchased at a local flower shop for about $5. You can also reuse these. I do get a lot of customers who give me the old piece and then I just replace the foam. You can purchase the foam at Michael's or any craft store. I also have been using these yoga blocks. They're $4 at Dollarama, super budget friendly, and I really like them because they give height to the saddle, making it appear much larger. So I'm going to use the foam from Dollarama because I just want to show you how I do it. So to connect the foam onto the wired saddle base, you're going to use some zip ties. These ones were purchased at Dollarama, and it's super easy to do. So you're just going to weed the zip ties through the wire base, and then you're going to attach that foam right on top. And I like to secure my foam on in two different areas onto the saddle base just to make it much more secure so it doesn't fall off. My zip ties were a little too small, so I did have to attach, I think, 3 or 4 together to go all the way around this foam. Once your foam is attached and it is secure onto the base, you can then go ahead and trim your zip ties so the tags are no longer sticking out. Now we can start with decorating the foam and creating this saddle. So the majority of the saddle is going to be your greenery, so you want to make sure you have a good variety. These decorative stems, the pine, they were purchased at Dollarama for a good buy, and they include some decorative items such as the berries and the pine cones. I'll also be using some of these leaves from this eucalyptus stem that I purchased at Dollarama, but you will need some garland, and this is going to be the majority of the saddle that's going to cover this foam. You're also going to use some wire cutters and some hot glue as well. So we're going to start with the garland. This was purchased at Michael's craft store for the buy one get one free. It was a great deal. It was actually cheaper than Dollarama's garland, and I think they were longer pieces. So what you're going to do is you're going to cut off pieces of the garland, and the garland is wire. You need the wired stuff because this is what you're going to use to poke into that foam. So it's the wire piece or the end piece that you're cutting off. You're going to apply some hot glue and then you're going to shove it into the foam. And the wire is good too because it's bendable and you can bend it whatever way you want and really cover up the foam. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut this whole garland up into pieces, and I usually use 1 full length of garland. I think it's a 9-foot length from Michael's craft store. So once I get it all cut up into pieces, I'm going to start with the sides of the saddle, and I just want to cover all of the sides so I no longer see the foam. Now we will be adding a bow to the front of this saddle, so I won't put as much garland in the very front. But I always try to add a little bit more on either side, and I like my sides to be a little bit longer, and that adds some length to the saddle as well. Once you have the majority of your sides complete with just the garland, you can then go ahead and start with covering up the top with the same garland. But before you do that, you're going to want to add your solar light. Now these were little lantern solar lights that were purchased at Dollarama for $4. They were super cute, and I thought they would make a great addition to the top of this saddle. Now you can use the traditional solar lights that have the peg that sticks into the ground. However, you're just going to have to remove the peg or the stem part of it and then push the little lantern top piece, the light piece, into your foam and secure it with hot glue. So with this lantern, all I'm doing to apply it to the foam is just hot gluing it onto the top. Once I secured the lantern from the bottom, I then went ahead and took my hot glue and just went all around the sides as well, just to make sure that this lantern wasn't going anywhere. Once your lantern's applied, you could then go ahead and add your bow to the very front. You want to make sure your ribbon is wired. This one was purchased at Michael's, and it's 2.5 inches wide. With all my bows, I like to use these twist ties. These were purchased at Dollarama for $1.25. Really budget friendly and lasts a long time. So the bow we'll be putting on the saddle is called a Pom Pom bow. I do have a tutorial on how to make this bow, but I'll show you in this video as well. So you're going to leave the ribbon on the roll the whole time until the bow is complete. You're going to start with your tail, and then you're going to make a middle loop. This is going to be your middle loop, and then you're going to twist that around. And you're going to hold that twist with a pinch with your thumb and your pointer finger in the middle of that little loop. And you want to hold this the entire time. So your next loop that you make is going to be a larger loop, and you're going to hold it in the middle with those two fingers again. Then you're going to go to the other side, and you're going to create another loop the same size as your second loop. And then you're going to hold it into the middle with that pinch. And you're going to go back and forth until you created your bow, usually 4 loops on either side. Once you're happy with the amount of loops, this is the point you can go ahead and cut it from the roll. This will be the second tail. So to secure the bow, you're going to take your twist tie and you're going to place it in through the middle of the smallest loop, and then secure it right where you were holding that pinch, and you're going to twist it around, and that's going to keep all of those loops in place. Once it's secure, you can then go ahead and fluff all them loops up to make your bow look perfect. You can then go ahead and attach it to the front part of your saddle just with the twist ties that you use to secure the loops. And I just secured the twist tie right around a piece of one of the garland that was already attached to the foam. And then you can go ahead and trim your tails with your V pattern. And I actually did apply a little hot glue to the back of the bow as well, just to make sure it stayed in place. So now that my bow is on, it's really starting to look like a saddle. So what we're going to do is take the garland again, and we're going to fill the top of the saddle so you no longer see the foam. Using the same technique, we're going to apply hot glue to the wired part of the garland and then stick it into the foam. And then you're going to bend the pieces whatever way you need to cover the foam up. So here is what it looks like when I got all the garland in place. Now I still see a little bit of the foam. So what you can do with that is just take little individual pieces of the garland and you can hot glue them right in them little areas that you didn't get covered. Make sure you check your sides as well. As you can see, some of the bottom of the sides didn't get covered, so I did take individual pieces and hot glued them on to cover up that foam. Once you're finished with the garland, you can then go ahead and add some more decor. So I have these frosted berries that I purchased at Michael's last year. I have these gorgeous white roses that were purchased at Dollarama for $2. They also came in a smaller version with a little more bunches. And then I also had these hydrangeas that I purchased last year at Michael's as well for a really good deal. And I'm going to take it apart and I'm going to use it in this saddle, and I'm only going to use one. I'm first going to take the hydrangea and I'm going to use my wire cutters and cut off each of the stems for the petals. And that way I can make multiple flowers out of one hydrangea. Just a budget-friendly tip. You're also going to want to cut your roses to size as well. You just need a little stem that will stick into the foam or be able to hot glue onto the garland. So I'm first going to apply the bigger roses, and I'll put them on either side of the bow, and you want it to be symmetrical. So whatever you're doing to one side, you're going to do to the other. And I like to apply all of the flowers onto the saddle first before I start hot gluing anything. And that way you can make changes if you don't like it. So here I'm adding some of the hydrangea petals to the front as well in little bunches. I think I put bunches of 4 on either side. And that was a good size for this saddle. I then took some of my decorative green items and I went ahead and removed all of the stems from that one pick and distributed them all throughout this saddle, and it just gave it some more greenery and really filled it up. I also added the pine cones that came with that particular stem as well. That stem was purchased at Dollarama for $1.75, super budget friendly. Pine cones look so good on Christmas saddles. They add a little bit of nature to them as well, and they're budget friendly. If you can find them outside, I've also used ones from my backyard. I also went ahead and added those frosted berries, just cutting off the berry part and some of the greenery as well. And then I just went ahead and placed them in all little areas that needed a little color. I then took the smaller roses and I added them to the back part, including some rosebuds, which really gave it a nice touch. Then I took some more greenery, the eucalyptus stems, and I cut off some of the leaves and I just distributed them all throughout the saddle, just giving it a little different color green. I also had some of these long pine stems that I tore off a pick, and I added them to the bottom on all four corners. So here's a quick 360 view of what it looks like. Now I'm just going to add one finished touch, and I found these cute little birds at Michael's, a pack of 4, and they come with little clips so you could clip them on the garland or wherever you would like. However, I went ahead and I removed the little clip and I hot glued it onto the top of the lantern, and this just completed this saddle. I love the little bird. I think it's a cardinal. It added the perfect touch to complete this DIY. So once you're happy with the placement of your decor, you can then go ahead and secure it all on using your hot glue gun. So here's the finished product. I'll also show you a picture of a few other ones I completed this year. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and it inspires you. Please like and subscribe for more DIY fun. Happy holidays!